The rain poured heavily, painting the city in a dull shade of gray. People hurried down the streets, shielding themselves from the downpour, their lives moving forward without a second thought. But for Daniel Rivers, time had long since lost its meaning. He sat in the back of his luxury car, staring blankly at the world outside, lost in memories that refused to fade. Once, he had everything. A billion-dollar empire, a mansion that overlooked the skyline, and a life filled with success. But none of it mattered anymore. Not since he lost Lily. Lily had been his world, his only daughter. The one person who made his cold, business-driven life feel warm. But school had been cruel to her. The bullying started small, whispers behind her back, cruel jokes about her appearance, about how her father was too busy to notice her. And Daniel, trapped in his endless meetings and business deals, had brushed it off. "Kids will be kids," he had said. "She'll be fine." But she wasn't fine. The pain had consumed her. And one tragic night, it became too much. She was gone. And Daniel never forgave himself. Now his world was empty. His wealth meant nothing. His success felt hollow. No amount of money could bring Lily back. He had built an empire, yet he had failed at the one thing that truly mattered, being a father. As his car rolled to a stop at a red light, Daniel barely noticed the alleyway beside him. But then, something caught his eye. A group of men stood in the dimly lit space, laughing, their voices harsh against the sound of the rain. At first, he thought nothing of it, just another group of people in the city. But then, he saw her. A girl, no older than 15, backed against the cold brick wall. Her clothes were torn, her hair soaked from the rain, and fear filled her wide, desperate eyes. They were bullying her. Daniel's heart clenched. It was as if time had rewound, and he was looking at Lily again, helpless, afraid, pleading for someone to step in. He gripped the armrest of his seat, a storm brewing inside him. He had failed once. He couldn't fail again. Without thinking, he pushed open the car door and stepped into the rain. His bodyguards rushed to stop him, but he waved them off. He wasn't a billionaire in that moment. He wasn't the untouchable businessman people feared. He was just a father who refused to let another child suffer while he stood by. As he approached, the bullies turned, their smirks fading when they saw him. But Daniel didn't stop. He didn't hesitate. This time, he was going to make a difference. This time, he wasn't going to walk away. The rain soaked through Daniel's expensive suit, but he didn't care. His focus was locked on the terrified girl in front of him and the men who had backed her into a corner. The tallest of them, a man with a cruel sneer, took a step forward, sizing Daniel up. "What's this? Some rich guy playing hero?" he scoffed, glancing at Daniel's tailored clothes and the luxury car parked nearby. His friends chuckled, but their laughter held uncertainty now. Daniel ignored them. He turned, his gaze to the girl, his expression softening. She was shaking, her arms wrapped tightly around herself as if trying to disappear. Her eyes darted between the men and Daniel, unsure of whether she could trust him. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice steady but gentle. She hesitated, then gave a small nod, but he could see the fear in her eyes. It was the same fear he had seen in Lily's before it was too late. "Leave her alone," Daniel said, shifting his attention back to the bullies. His voice was calm, but there was an undeniable authority in it, one that came from years of being at the top. "The leader," scoffed. "And if we don't?" Daniel took a step forward, unshaken. "Then you'll deal with me." A tense silence hung in the air. The bullies exchanged glances, weighing their options. It was clear they had expected an easy target, not a man who stood his ground despite being outnumbered. But before they could make a move, Daniel subtly gestured to the side. His bodyguards, who had been waiting at a distance, stepped forward just enough for their presence to be known. That was all it took. The bullies hesitated, then muttered curses under their breath before walking away. Daniel let out a slow breath, before turning back to the girl. She was still watching him with wary eyes, her thin arms hugging her body for warmth. "You're safe now," he assured her. What's your name? She hesitated. Emma, she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. Daniel nodded. Emma, do you have anywhere to go? Her silence was answer enough. Something inside Daniel twisted. He knew that helpless feeling all too well. The feeling of being alone in the world with no one to turn to. He couldn't walk away. Not this time. Come with me, he said, his voice softer now. I can help. Emma's eyes widened with uncertainty. Why? She asked, her voice carrying years of mistrust. Why would you help me? Daniel hesitated, memories of Lily flashing in his mind. Because I should have helped someone a long time ago, he admitted. And I won't make that mistake. Again. For a long moment, Emma just stared at him, her expression unreadable. Then, finally, she gave a small nod. Daniel led her to the car, his heart heavier than before. He had saved her from those bullies. But he knew this was just the beginning. Emma had been living a life far worse than what he had witnessed tonight. And now, for the first time in a long time, Daniel had a chance to do something right. But was it enough? The ride back to Daniel's estate was quiet. Emma sat in the plush leather seat, her small frame curled up as if she were trying to make herself invisible. She didn't say much, only answering when Daniel asked simple questions. Her voice was soft, guarded. He understood. Trust wasn't something that came easily, especially for someone who had been through what she had. When they arrived at his mansion, Emma hesitated at the doorstep. The towering house, with its massive windows and golden lights, was nothing like the dark streets she had known. She looked at Daniel uncertainly, as if she didn't belong there. You don't have to be afraid, Daniel assured her. You're safe here. She swallowed hard but stepped inside. The warmth of the house wrapped around her, a stark contrast to the cold she had been living in. A housekeeper approached, offering a soft smile. I'll show you to your room, dear. Emma hesitated before following. As Daniel watched her disappear down the hallway, he felt something stir inside him. Something he hadn't felt in a long time. A purpose beyond business, beyond wealth. Over the next few weeks, Emma slowly adjusted. At first, she barely spoke, still carrying the weight of her past. But little by little, the walls she had built around herself started to crack. Daniel made sure she had everything she needed: clothes, food, education. But more importantly, he made sure she felt seen, heard. One evening, as they sat across from each other at dinner, Emma finally spoke without him prompting her. Why, are you doing this? She asked, her voice quiet but steady. Daniel set down his fork and looked at her. He could have given her a simple answer, something easy. But she deserved the truth. I lost my daughter, he said, the words heavy. She needed me, and I didn't see it in time. I don't want to make that mistake again. Emma stared at him, processing his words. Then, after a long pause, she nodded. I get it, she said softly. From that moment on, something shifted. She no longer looked at him with uncertainty, but with understanding. A connection had formed, fragile, but real. But just when things seemed to be getting better, the past found a way to creep back in. One afternoon, Emma came home from school, quieter than usual. Daniel noticed right away. What happened? He asked. She hesitated. Some kids. They found out where I used to live. They said I don't belong here. Daniel's chest tightened. He had seen this before. The cruelty. The way words could cut deeper than any wound. He wasn't going to let history repeat itself. You belong wherever you choose to be, he told her firmly. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Emma nodded, but doubt lingered in her eyes. That night, Daniel sat alone in his office, thinking. He had spent his life fixing problems with money, but this wasn't something money could solve. Emma needed more than just a roof over her head. She needed confidence, strength, the belief that she was worth something. The next day, Daniel made a call. A week later, Emma walked into a room filled with people who had once been in her shoes. People who had been homeless, bullied, abandoned. But they weren't broken. They had rebuilt their lives, and they were here to help her do the same. As she listened to their stories, something changed in her. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was healing. Months passed, and Emma blossomed into a version of herself she never thought possible. She held her head higher. She laughed more. She even started mentoring others, sharing her story to help those who felt lost, just as she once had. One evening, as she and Daniel sat outside watching the sunset, she turned to him. "I used to think no one would ever care about me," she admitted. "But you proved me wrong." Daniel smiled, a rare warmth in his expression. "You proved yourself wrong," he corrected her. "You were always worth caring about." For the first time in years, he felt something he thought he had lost forever. Peace. Lily's absence would always be a wound that never fully healed. But in helping Emma, he had found something he never expected. A second chance. Not just to save someone else, but to save himself too.